Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this brand new show. It is Live 270, and this is a brand new show. It's actually a political podcast. Yes, I know. I swore that I wasn't going to get into politics for another month, but unfortunately, the itch just couldn't, I just couldn't stay away from it. So we've decided to launch a new show, and as part of that, we have a brand new co host. You've never seen him before, but his name is Mr. Kevin Gaona. Kevin and I go back many years, actually, probably 30 years. We went to high school together. And Kevin is also a former member of the U.S. military. He served his country for many, many years. And I welcome him on the show. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danny. Appreciate that.
Not a problem. Not a problem, sir. I'm glad to have you on the show. I know that you and I had been on discussions for about a year, trying to figure out when to do this. And I felt that the time was right. So, for those of you that don't know what this show is going to be about, it is going to be a show that is going to be ongoing throughout this year as well as all the way till November of next year. And we're going to dive into, national politics primarily. And as you know, there's a lot going on right now in national politics. It seems every day, something's going on. But we decided to actually do something a little different for our show, our starting show. We wanted to talk about the recent revelations by uh, a couple of whistleblowers that actually participated in a congressional hearing about a week or so ago. And Kevin, in your life in the military, did you ever run into any unexplained phenomena? And it doesn't necessarily have to be UFOs.
No, not like that. My field of or my occupational specialty was in satellite communications.
Ah,
So occasionally we had what we called unauthorized users, right?
yeah,
So what that meant was that in our uh, field of view in the spectrum analyzers, we would see signals, and we
right,
didn't know what it was, right?
right,
It was some kind of interference,
right,
but it's different, way different than UFO or UAPs, which
right.
is the same thing. I want to point that out from the very beginning that UAP and UFO, they're referring to the same thing.
Right,
Uh,
right,
they just decided to change the terminology to try to get rid of the all the baggage that 60, 70 years of uh, hearing about little green men
right.
brought with it. They wanted to get rid of that,
Yeah.
and so they came up with UAPs. But no, I never had an experience with UFOs or UAPs.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that, as you mentioned, the stories have been going on for 60, 70 years. I mean, ever since the Roswell incident, or what was coined the Roswell incident back in 1947, which I guess turned out to be a weather balloon. At least that was the official story, right? So,
Yeah,
um, there's been a lot of instances back and forth. There was a government project called Project Blue Book back in the late 60s that kind of did a pretty thorough investigation on some of these claims as far as UFOs go. But for the most part, a lot of the times there's a lot of these claims have been discredited, but there's always been that lingering question, right? And there are a couple of people that actually came forward, and did congressional testimony about a week ago with regards to UAPs, and it was kind of astonishing, to hear some of what they were saying because these guys weren't like these kooks, like from MUFON or something like that, where they claim to be abducted and stuff like that. I mean, these were career, military guys that actually, primarily in the Air Force, I think, and they talked about
yeah.
some of the things that they saw. Um, I wanted to kind of flip over for a little bit to the other screen here, and we're going to try to show some of the clips, and hopefully, hopefully the YouTube police will not come after me. They seem to be I seem to be a favorite target of them, and there's always that question, what's copyrighted and what isn't, and it's kind of getting very fuzzy because the clips that I'm showing today to try to get around anybody claiming a copyright is through C-SPAN, and of course that's a public channel, so hopefully they won't make an excuse and say, well, yeah, it's a public channel, but you still can't do that. So we'll see what happens. So if our stream gets cut off midway, which they've done in the past, we'll just keep on going. It's the session is recorded afterwards, so I'm not really concerned about that. So let me go ahead and just play a few things here. Let me set up the screen because I didn't set it up beforehand, which was bad of me, but that's all right. It's our first show. We can definitely get a pass. All right, let me do this real quick. Bring it up. Give me a second. There we go. It's up. Just keep in here. Just fix it a little bit here. And believe it or not, this screen was actually a virtual theater at one time when we first started the other shows. So we used it as a virtual theater. It had curtains and everything. But we're not gonna do that today. Let's see here. All right, so I've got
Things progress, right?
Things progress, no doubt about that. All right, let me see here. So we've got that one. Lock it. Do this. Add it. And do window. That. And here we go. Give me a second. Yeah, I usually have all this stuff set up. What happened is somehow, and it's happened before, my VLC media player, I've installed it a few times and it just goes away, and I don't know what in the world's going on with that.
When I was working at the church office some years ago, I always had that issue with that player also, where
Yeah,
that would happen.
I don't know what the deal is. All right, here
Yeah.
we go. So we're going to play a little bit of this clip and we're going to do an intro. This guy is Ryan Graves. He apparently used to be in the Air Force, and he started a organization called Americans for Safe Aerospace. And he primarily talks about some of the things that commercial pilots as well as military pilots go through when it comes to reporting or the lack of reporting. So we'll just listen for a little bit and we'll just jump around here for a second.
Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Garcia, distinguished members of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security, Representatives Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were previously unspoken due to the absence of a safe intake process. More than 30 witnesses have come forward, and almost 5,000 Americans have joined us in the fight for transparency at safeaerospace.org. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii and in the North Atlantic. Other veterans are also coming forward to us regarding UAP encounters in our airspace and oceans. The most compelling involve observations of UAP by multiple witnesses and sensor systems. I believe these accounts are only scratching the surface, and more will share their experiences once it is safe to do so. In closing, I recognize the skepticism surrounding this topic. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science. In either case, unidentified objects are concerned for flight safety. The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies. It is long overdue.
So this guy, makes these claims that, what some of these pilots saw was this sphere, this clear sphere, and some kind of cube in a sphere. I mean, it's kind of weird, right? That, they would see that. I mean, what is your take on that?
I have always been incredulous of these claims
Yeah.
because most of the time, the people who have made the claims have been, you know, I guess people like you and me, just regular Joes, just people who are out there who are quote unquote believers who are credulous, right? And I have often classified them as hippies, whether that's fair or not to them. People who are out there who have nothing better to do,
Yeah.
so they're looking for something. And when you're looking for something, that devoutly you're bound to find something,
Yeah.
right?
Now, of
So
course,
I've never really,
yeah,
I've
go
never
ahead.
really bought into it.
Now, of
But
course, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
now that you have these kinds of individuals, people with a discriminating mindset that know the skies, that know the stars, that can differentiate, not very clearly, right? Because these things, the way they describe them, they move fast, they have different, they do shifty movements in the sky, but these pilots, they're trained, whether they're civilian or military, they're trained, their eyes are trained to distinguish certain things in the sky.
Yeah.
And so that changes the like, it's a paradigm changer for me in terms of, okay, we need to take a look at this.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
keep in mind that, this guy doesn't look like somebody that just came out of Woodstock and had a little shot of LSD, right? I mean, this guy's got a record, right?
correct.
So we can't
Correct.
necessarily say that he's a hippie, but I mean, I do get it. I mean, there are people that come out, whistleblowers typically are people that are disgruntled and have a, have an axe to grind with somebody typically, right? But this
Right.
one's not actually the whistleblower. It's actually another one that we're going to show in a little bit. But I wanted to kind of ask you something here. Do you notice who this guy is right in back of him? He used to be what the rumor is, and I tried doing research last night in photos and pictures and so forth. This guy appears to be the former director of national intelligence under the Obama administration. And there was a lot.
Is that Clapper?
That's Clapper. I
That's what I
believe.
thought.
Yeah, I believe that it's Clapper. And there is all kinds of chatter on the internet over the last several days. What in the world is Clapper doing at the hearing? Now, I did
Yeah.
some research, and it turns out that Clapper was one of the guys that was involved in investigating some of these phenomena and things like that, or he was in charge of a group. But that appears to be Clapper. Now, there was a couple of guys out there on the internet saying, "Oh, no, 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 that's not Clapper. That's some other guy that used to work at DOD." I don't know for sure if it's Clapper, but it sure looks like Clapper. I mean, I even zoomed in to look at the ear shape and then compared it to old pictures of Clapper, and then some pictures of Clapper showed that he had a little bit more of a pointed ear, like Mr. Spock. God forbid he's not Vulcan, right? But no, but I believe that it is Clapper. So it's kind of weird, why he was there. I mean, he wasn't there to say anything, or maybe he was there to intimidate. I'm not really sure what the deal was, but I believe, unless it's somebody else that looks like Clapper, that's Clapper.
Full disclosure here.
Yeah,
I don't trust any of the intelligence agencies, which means I don't trust most of the directors, whether they were appointed by Republicans or Democrats.
yeah,
I have read several histories of the NSA, of the CIA, and the FBI, and so I am very hesitant to trust them,
yeah,
regardless of what they're investigating, and regardless of who they have been.
yeah,
One of the guys that I do trust is Bob Gates,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
His record on everything he has ever done, the guy is transparent. Now, as director of intelligence, you kind of do and say things for national security that are probably questionable. Uh, but I don't like Clapper.
yeah.
I think, anyways, I'm getting off topic, but
Well,
yeah,
let's. Yeah,
if that's Clapper, that makes all of these very, as the young people say now, very sus.
yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, Clapper not only was his last stint was the director of national intelligence, but even before then,
Yep.
he was in charge of the NSA.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
I
under
know.
and under the NSA, I believe, he directed programs for all kinds of domestic espionage, or that's the accusation, with regards to that.
Yeah.
So, but that was a really shock to me when I kept on looking. And at first, when I saw the video, I was like, I've seen this guy somewhere before, and I've seen this guy somewhere before. And then it hit me, it's Clapper. And so then I went out there, tried looking at old photographs. I mean, I think it is. Some people were arguing that it wasn't, but it's just something to note that was kind of weird. So
He looks young to me.
he
He
does
looks a
look
little young to me.
he does look a little young, but if you go back and look at some photos, recent and otherwise, it's pretty close, But you never know. Nobody said
Yeah.
anything. I mean, Clapper has not said anything one way or the other, right? But if it was Clapper, yeah, there's definitely a suspicion. What was he doing there? So, so, this is this guy, and then we've got the actual whistleblower. Let's see if I could.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Grush. Mr. Chairman, ranking members and congressmen, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time. My name is David Charles Grush. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty, Air National Guard, and Reserve at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. I became a whistleblower through a PPD-19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony to myself and my various colleagues. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years while I was with the UAP Task Force and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it. This is because of these steps, I believe strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you. I am driven by a commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them. In the U.S. Air Force, in my National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP Task Force from 2019 to 2021. I served at the NRO Operations Center on the Director's Briefing staff, which included the coordination of the Presidential Daily Brief and supporting variety of contingency operations, which I was the Reserve Intelligence Division Chief backup. In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, so, this guy, obviously he's the whistleblower, right? He's had a military background, he's been in intelligence, but it almost seems when I listen to him is that, as they used to say in most of our Hispanic families, le pone mucha crema a los tacos.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
He spit out some agency names that I've never heard about. Had you ever heard about some of those agencies that he claimed to have worked?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with everything he said there. Like he's talking secrecy of secrecy of secrecy. Like I get everything he was talking about. Like. Yeah, because not in official capacity, because my job and my rank in the military never rose to that level, right? But in nothing he said is classified, but because I read so much on the intel side of things, for my own, just because I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with like the NGA, NGO things, like the NRO,
Uh-huh.
Operation Center, and a bunch of those other things he was talking about. I didn't catch all of it. Like wasn't able to write it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had access to a lot of some of the most highly classified information regarding probably not just UFOs or UAPs, but other stuff,
Right.
uh, national security
Yeah.
items.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, it's one of those things, I've seen this video multiple times this week in prep for this, and I am a little skeptical a little bit about some of his claims, but he seems to be a guy once again, not just came out of Woodstock smoking, smoking weed or taking LSD, but this guy appears to be somebody that was up in the upper levels of government. Um, he talks about reverse engineering. I mean, I heard of stories back in the 50s and the 60s when they captured Russian MiG fighters and they tried to fly them, and I don't know if there was anything to reverse engineer from the Russians. To be honest with you, it seems like their stuff was pretty antiquated. So I'm not sure, But do you believe that the military has reverse engineering programs for any captured aircraft or weapons of such?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I my knee jerk response to that or reaction to it is heck no.
yeah,
No. I don't buy it. I'd have to see it.
yeah,
Even being told by trustworthy people, I'm not going to buy it. I have to see it to
yeah,
believe it.
yeah,
As far as stuff like with the Russians and things, I know that we had like MiG 19s and MiG 21s that we captured or we obtained through backdoor deals with other countries, and we had a squadron. I can't remember what it's called, but we had a squadron of those planes that we used to train our pilots.
right,
Um, uh, I can't remember what it's called. I have a book that I read a few years ago that tells the history of the squadron and all of that. Very, very interesting. Um, I mean, it was easier to do that than to try to reverse engineer it and build one and all of that.
right,
They had different capabilities. Sometimes some of them were more maneuverable than ours.
right.
So getting one of them or two of them or however many of them was good because then our pilots could train the dogfighting. That I think that's where the Top Gun was born.
Right.
Anyways, that's kind of a sidebar
Yeah, but I don't
to
think
what
we
they
ever
were
tried
saying.
to reverse engineer a MiG fighter. I don't think there was ever a need to.
No, no. I mean, we
You know?
had some of them.
Yeah,
We actually had the fighters, the MiGs,
yeah,
back in the '60s and the '70s, maybe a little bit later. I think we started having them, getting them in during the Vietnam War.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
there's the one thing that I do want to point out from both this guy and Graves, the first witness, and one of the things that they're pointing out that is absolutely true is the excessive secrecy and the over classification of material.
Yeah,
Um, and there's so much stuff in that the government classifies, whether it's confidential, secret, top secret SEI, top secret SEI with a polygraph, top secret SEI, and then there's all of these different compartments, right?
yeah,
That you and they do it with a purpose, right? But especially when you get to all the different compartments, so that no one person has access to the whole pie.
right.
Because if one person knows all the components of this one program, well, then they can sell it to the highest bidder
Exactly.
because they know everything. So
Right.
I understand that part. but for the important programs uh, of national security.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that should not be classified. I mean, that's something that even a freaking private that just came into active duty can, some of them are knuckleheads, but a lot of them are smart and they see it, and because we went through it. I mean, I went through it,
Right.
and we would have discussions about that in the barracks and when we're working shift. I dealt with a lot of classified information.
Yeah.
And we're like, this is a waste of time and paper.
Right.
Because then you got to destroy it.
I think 45 would say that he just took a few White House recipes from the White House chef, and those became classified.
Yeah, that's more, don't even get me started.
Oh, don't worry, we'll have a special episode on that whole story altogether down the road.
Yeah, that one's gonna be interesting.
All right, now the guy that was really, really astonishing and credible to me, at least seemed a little bit more credible, was the next guy. More credible, I think, and maybe it's just me. But this other guy was a little bit more credible than these other two. Let's play him for a second.
Thank you. Commander Fravor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Congressmen, Congresswomen. I want to first thank you for the invitation to speak to the committee on the UAP topic that's been in the news for the past 6 years and seems to be continuing to gain momentum. As you know, my name is David Fravor. I'm a retired commander in the United States Navy. In 2004, I was a commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world-famous Black Aces. We were attached to Carrier Wing 11, stationed on board the USS Nimitz, and had begun a 2-month workup cycle off the coast of California. On this day, we were scheduled for a 2v2 air-to-air training with the USS Princeton as our control. When we launched off Nimitz, my wingman was joining up. We were told that the training was going to be suspended and we were going to proceed with real-world tasking. As we proceeded to the west, the air controller was counting down the range to an object that we were going to, and we were unaware of what we were going to see when we arrived. The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All four of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down and saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to them, and they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar, and I can get into modes later if you're interested. What is shocking to us is that the incident was never investigated. None of my crew were ever questioned. Tapes were never taken, and after a couple days, it turned into a great story with friends. It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an official report that came out that's now on the internet. Years later, I was contacted by the other pilot, Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was contacted by Mr. Elizondo, and we talked for a short period of time, and he said we'd be in contact. A few weeks after that, I was made aware that Lou had left the Pentagon in protest and joined forces with Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, and others to form Two Stars Academy, an organization that pressed the issue with leading industry experts and U.S. government officials. They worked with Leslie Kean, who is present today, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper to publish the articles in the New York Times 2017 New York Times. And it removed the stigma on the topic of UFOs, which is why we're here today. Those articles open the door for the government and public that cannot be closed. It has led to an interest from our elected officials who are not focused on little green men, but figuring out where these craft are, where they're from, the technology they possess, how do they operate. It also led to the Whistleblower Protection Act and the NDAA. There are multiple witnesses coming forward to say that have firsthand knowledge, and Mr. Grush just covered that. What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across all work done in the government using taxpayer funds. Relative to government programs, even unacknowledged WAVE programs have some level of oversight by the appropriate committee members in the House and Senate, and this work that is said to be occurring from whistleblower testimonies should not be exempt. In closing, I would like to say that the Tic Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens. I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this guy was a Navy commander, I guess, a few years back, and, he observed, this object that looked like a Tic Tac, like the old Tic Tac candy. And he talked about maneuvers that, most conventional aircraft are incapable of doing today. So the question, if it isn't out of this world, is it something that black ops programs within the government have worked on? Is it our enemies, primarily Russia or China, which are probably the only ones that could technically, get to anywhere we can't? Not to say that they can. I'm just saying that out of all the countries, they probably are the only two that come to mind. What's your take on what this guy says?
Earlier, I said that I've never really believed in UFOs, and what I meant by that is that I have never believed in the little green man theory, right? I've always, but what I have always believed though is that it was like a foreign government that has developed technology and they're testing it, and we've never been able to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
We have always had this arrogance about us that no one can have anything better than us in any area.
Yeah.
And historically, it can be shown that there's been times when other countries, Germany, Japan, Russia, have had things, technological advancements, products that are better than ours. Germany makes better cars than ours.
Right.
And hey, I love America, and I'll buy American, even if I can afford other stuff. I'll buy American,
right,
any day of the week. But that doesn't mean that German cars are not better than American cars, right? Doesn't make me anti-American because I recognize a fact,
right,
and I say it. Militarily, the Germans, the Russians, and now China. There are disputes about how much or whether it's true that China has better AI and quantum computing and quantum cryptography systems and things like that. The fact of the matter is that China has spent more money, and done more research in some of those systems.
right.
They have their own space station. They have other things. They have stuff in the moon that we don't have. China has done a lot of things, is doing a lot of things that we haven't, that we stopped doing. So it shouldn't be far fetched. It's not anti American to suppose that another country has quietly done things in aircraft design that we haven't thought about yet.
Yeah.
We don't we don't have the copyright on intelligence as
Right.
much as we would like to think that.
Yeah. Well, that's one
So
of the
I
things
think
that I
that's
think
possible.
recently Elon Musk even pointed out, was that he talked about China and the fact that we should not discount the Chinese space program. That in fact
Yeah.
they're way ahead of the Russians. While the Russians are over there invading countries and spending money on territorial conquest, the Chinese are actively uh, you know making their space program robust, and he made it very clear that that is a force to be reckoned with. It's also no secret, and I don't understand why people in this country adopted it. And look, guilty as charged myself because I'm on TikTok. But people don't realize that TikTok is a Chinese company through and through.
Yeah.
So all these photos and pictures and texts and stuff like that that we're posting on TikTok, they are going through Chinese servers, and
Hmm.
nobody seems to care, you know, including myself, because it's hard these days in social media to just be on Facebook and YouTube when you've got over here all these people now on TikTok. So this show's on TikTok as well, but what I'm saying is that we tend to discount the Chinese technological edge like they're kind of ancient. They're not. They're not. um,
Not
it's
by a long shot.
no, no. I mean, look, right now, we all know that Apple, Microsoft, Google, all of their devices, their phones, and everything else. Yes, the engineering and the design is done here in the United States, but the manufacturing is done in China. It's done by a company called Foxconn, and it's done by there's another company. I can't remember the name of the other company. It was Foxconn and somebody else, but there's only two manufacturers, and they sit in mainland China. And it's funny because, as I've heard some friends say, you've got a big facility in China here, and you've got one manufacturing line building an iPhone, and you got the other manufacturing line building the Samsung, and you got the other manufacturing line building an LG phone, and they're all done by the same team, and people don't know it, you know. At 10
Yeah.
cents a day, by the way. Let's not forget, 10 cents a day for most of those workers.
Well, and I mean, think about it. Who makes like 70 or 80% of the microchips for computers? Taiwan,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Don't forget India. India is it's a we think of India as a poor country, and a lot of people associate poverty with maybe being dumb
Right,
because they're poor. But they're
right,
poor because of their economic system and because there's so many of them. Their population is larger than China. People don't realize that now. India
right.
has surpassed China now, but they're a highly intelligent people.
Yeah,
And I mean, if you call Microsoft or Google or many other those tech companies for support, your call goes to India.
exactly.
It may
It
be
does.
hard to understand them, but they know how to fix problems.
Right. Yeah,
Uh, and so, again, they may not have all the resources in the infrastructure yet to develop some of these uh, spacecraft and those kinds of things. Uh, but there are countries that do. China and Russia have the resources and the know-how and the infrastructure to do it.
yeah.
Uh, so going back to the UAP UFO, what is it? Is it little green men? Is it space aliens, or is it, a foreign country? I go with a foreign country.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
yeah.
it's never happened before that I'm wrong, but this could be the first time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, you know, I mean, just to hear these guys talk about how quick and fast, these so-called objects go, it's unconventional. I mean, you know that an airplane, has a certain ceiling, a maximum ceiling height. I can't remember where it's 40,000 feet or whatever it is. But then, an airplane can't do the kind of maneuvers without running into stalls. I mean, I've been watching a few YouTube videos. I don't know why I get into these YouTube videos or they come to me. I sometimes feel if I ever hop on an airplane one day, I think I'm going to die in a crash or because I get them all the time on YouTube and I've seen the stories about the stalls and stuff like that and it's scary. I mean, it is really scary the kind of things that a plane, can go through during a stall. And then if, remember that plane over there in the Pacific, that Alaska one that flew from Mexico over to, I think it was headed to Los Angeles, and the vertical and horizontal stabilizers messed up because the jack screw was kind of messed up and the thing went like straight down, knee down.
Yeah,
I mean, those are things that airplanes can't do. I mean, we see aer- acrobatics and aerobatics on an air show, but that's different. But a normal airliner, per se, can't
yeah.
do those things,
There was an incident in I want to say 2019, and I'm gonna go on a limb, and I'm gonna say that it was the USS Omaha
Uh,
that caught the information operations center. I think that's what it's called. Caught and recorded some kind of like a, I think it was a spherical spacecraft,
yeah,
and he was doing these things underwater,
yeah,
underwater, and the way it was moving, it was unnatural. Like the physics are not possible
right,
for what we know that a spacecraft, a man-made spacecraft, should not be able to do the things that this thing was doing,
right,
right? And so, what is it?
yeah,
Who designed it? Why was it around a U.S. spacecraft that did not, the radar did not catch it until it was right in front of it? And by that, I don't mean like it was like 5 feet from it. It was,
right,
but it was well within. If it had a weapon system, and maybe it did, maybe, but it didn't use it. But it just showed up too late for our ship to take a first shot,
right,
right?
right,
So it makes you wonder. Like I read these things, and there's a c4isr.net website that has all it does is no political BS.
yeah,
It's just all of this defense related news,
right,
whether uh, it's mostly dealing with tech in every area of tech and military,
yeah,
right? And I read too much junk. I'm always reading. I get sometimes that's what triggers them. Yeah, it's like it makes you wonder. And sometimes I think like, okay, that's probably something not man-made,
right,
right? Because our people should be smart enough, unless they don't want to tell us. But
right,
our top scientists in the military at DARPA or whatever, they should know if that's sort of possible, right?
right,
And they tell us, oh, that's not possible. Hey, if it's possible, DARPA would know,
right,
but DARPA also would not tell us.
right, right.
For
Well,
those, for people who may not know, DARPA is Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, right?
yep,
It's the Pentagon's brainiacs.
yep. No, no, yeah. We've heard a lot about DARPA. Now, I hope to God that, if it is advanced technology, that I hope that it is something that this country is developing and not
Yeah,
Russia or China. I mean, obviously, here locally, we with few friends, we're always talking about SpaceX. We're here 20 miles away from the launch pad. And I don't know if you've been down here and been down there, but you can literally drive up. I mean, there's basically no security. And I'm thinking to myself, if I were Russia or China, I'd be having people over here just spying left and right. But you can
Yeah.
literally just walk in very close to the high bays and see the stuff that's being developed. Not to say that, SpaceX, is any more advanced than maybe the Chinese program is. But what I'm saying is there's not a whole lot of security, or it's like they just don't really care if people walk in or not. I'm not saying you can go all the way in, no. But you can get close enough to take pictures. And, there's a ton of YouTubers down here that are constantly, you know, taking all sorts of video. Sometimes I'm wondering if that's such a good thing or a bad thing, especially when it comes to our enemies. It seems like now the Russians or the Chinese don't even have to recruit anybody. They just go onto the internet and log into any of these YouTubers, and they can get all the information they want, all the video they want just by logging into YouTube. I don't know. It's I
From
just
what
feel
I have
yeah.
from what I have read, there's nothing new in the design of the rockets or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so my concern with the lack of security there is that it could easily be overwhelmed and they can like blow up the place.
Right.
And that's a problem, a serious problem, not just for uh, what's the satellite service? It escapes my mind.
Starlink.
Starlink,
Yeah.
which is the quality of service is up for debate for
Yeah.
different people in different areas, and it has to do with the number of satellites that are up in space still, and the way they're crisscrossing like this, like as they're rotating,
Right.
they're like above each other. It's a really crazy layout. The way the constellation of satellites is passing the service for one customer to the way the satellites interact. But anyways, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
don't want to
just
geek out on that.
yeah.
But the concern is for like the way what they do for NASA and what they do for other. They're not doing stuff just for NASA.
Right.
Okay, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
That's my concern,
Yeah.
that they could easily damage the launch facilities if they wanted to, and set us back
Right.
for some other missions.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing, right now, other than SpaceX, because, Boeing is still having a hard time with their rocket program. They can't get that thing off the ground.
I
Um,
know.
SpaceX is the only rocket company that can get us back and forth to the space station. So if we were to lose SpaceX's capabilities, we'd be up the creek. I mean, we'd have to go back and negotiate with Vladimir Putin once again and pay him millions of dollars to ferry
Yeah,
cargo and astronauts back again. I mean, that was just a complete waste of money and time that we spent paying those Russians for stuff that we could have done ourselves. We literally gave them millions for them to divert to invest in their own, military programs again. Just because
exactly.
I mean, it was just a waste. So, it's just unfortunate. But I really hope, back to this topic, that it is us, that it is us, and that it's not the Chinese, because I'm not so sure about the Russians, but the Chinese, they got caught with their hands in the cookie jar just a few months ago when they had that Chinese balloon, flying over, some of those
Yeah,
sites in North Dakota, the missile sites and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just my hope is that, if it's not little green men, then I hope that we're at that it's us that is doing this, and that it's nobody else, for that matter.
right.
If we
Yeah, I'm
get
with you.
yeah, if Google disconnects us, I will resend you another link. Okay, just want to let you
Okay.
know that. Okay. So I want to play just a last clip because this video is long, and we could probably have a part two, but I don't think I want to have a part two on this topic anymore. I want
Okay.
to get to Grush because he makes some claims which are astonishing. Let me get there. I still think that guy's Clapper, but I don't know. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and find the other clip. Let me switch screens for a second while I set up the other clip. I'll switch back to this while I set up the other clip. Give me a second. Yeah, that guy looks just like Clapper. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I saw that it was bothering me because I couldn't figure out who he reminded me of. And
I
then when
hope
you
I'm.
started talking
I
about
really,
it,
I really hope I'm wrong because if I'm not, then I really am like, okay, what's he doing there? Anytime you have an
yeah, that's
intelligence,
fishy. That's fishy if that's Clapper.
yeah. Okay, here we go. Let me reset the video here. All right, this is Representative Nancy Mace. She's a Republican from South Carolina, and she kind of gets down to the meat of this, and I'm a little astonished by Mr. Grush's remarks. Whether they're true or untrue, God knows. Whether he was on something that day, who knows? But here we go.
Stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably the most shocking part of this whole congressional testimony. I had never heard somebody say that, not even close. Not even the cigarette smoking man on the X-Files would have ever said something like that. So, I mean, what's your take? I mean, is this guy loony, or is there some truth to this, or we just don't know? I mean, it's just so crazy, you know?
Like, what does he mean by biologics? Like,
Well, that's the first time that I have heard that word used in a sense to describe sentient beings, so to speak. I heard that word before a few months ago in a business setting, but yeah, I don't know what he means by biologics. I mean, what does he mean? Does he mean an amoeba? Does it mean a single cell organism? I mean, and then his hesitance to speak about it in public, obviously because, because they're saying that they're going to drag these guys into a skiff. I guess it's secure communication room location that Congress, I guess, can do, but I think that was the most astonishing part of this whole thing. Was that claim. I just don't know. I'd never heard anybody say that before.
yeah, because it's but biologic could be just components of a living organism, right? So it could be. I mean, is it just like, I don't know, DNA?
Yeah.
Is it human DNA? Because if it's just human DNA, that means the spacecraft is man-made, and there was human DNA left there, and it was being flown remotely. I mean, is that what that is?
Yeah.
They're making it seem like by using the word biologic and not using human DNA instead,
Right.
they're making it seem like it's something otherworldly, right? But I am
Right.
not convinced because of what biologics can mean.
Right.
So they need to be more specific. Uh, and it just last night I'm taking a course on applied cryptography. So I was up on very late
Oh
reading
gosh.
on yeah, it's a crazy course. It's kicking my behind. But I got into a discussion about the Clipper the Clipper chip,
Right.
which essentially do you know what that is, right?
It's like an encryption chip, right?
Right. And the NSA in the 90s wanted for every telecommunications entity in the US to use it and to give the key to the NSA so the NSA could basically read every American's mail,
Right. Right.
right?
Because there's in
It didn't,
encryption, yeah, in
it,
encryption, there's a public key and a private key.
right,
And
right.
without the
And, but
private key, they can have the public key, but without the private key, they can't do it, supposedly. Yeah.
right. And the Congress said, heck no. So it didn't go through. Anyways, so one of the discussions we had online was about what do we think about that? Should the NSA have or not have this private key?
Right.
Uh, and so I got into it with this guy. He was saying that they should for national security reasons, especially with what we know after 9/11.
Right.
So then we started discussing the Patriot Act. Him and I, we got deep. We thought we got into the weeds about the Patriot Act and all of that. And uh, the issue with the way people define things and excessive secrecy, the government can throw around those terms to prosecute people, to hide things, to do whatever they want. Once they throw excessive secrecy, what they were saying about over a classification, national security, they don't have to tell you anything, right?
Right.
Which is what they've done with the JFK assassination, with UFOs, and now they're changing the language because they don't want to tell you about UFOs, so they're changing the language.
Right.
I mean, there's a report I downloaded it today. I think I still have it open on my phone. I was trying to read it. It's called the preliminary assessment of of UAPs. It was released a year ago. It's like this is a brief summary. It's 9 pages. There's 9 pages of nothingness.
Right.
It's a government putting out a document that it's for the public, but they don't tell you anything
Right.
because it's secret information. It's for national security reasons. You know what? I call BS.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what do you
And
think?
so,
What do you think about somebody like Snowden, for example? It shocks me that a guy of his no, say stature. What should I say? At his level, would have that much access to that much information. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I've worked at companies, even though I worked in IT, there is one set of files that I wasn't privy to and I wasn't allowed to see, and that was HR files. Anything related to the employee's personal information, we didn't have access. If we were caught trying to get access, that was automatic termination. So how did how does somebody like Snowden, you know what I'm saying? How how in the world was he able to get all these so-called secrets? And by the way, we don't know what all these secrets are. He still has not given it. I don't think anybody, even though I don't think even the Russians have it, as to what he's got. I mean, but you know,
you'd be surprised how lax the government can be. Not everyone and not every organization, but that's why the phrase exists.
yeah,
It's good enough for government work,
yeah,
right? It exists for a reason because even the most of reputable government institutions,
Yeah.
of which the military is one.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are within different, I'm going to use the word branches, but I'm not just referring to the military. There are branches within institutions, call it the IRS, the FBI, NSA, call it uh, Department of Commerce, whatever. There are units within that where people are lax,
Yeah.
because you have knuckleheads, you have people that are lazy, that are incompetent, that somehow manage to get to positions of influence, of authority. Uh, they're people who are supposed to have oversight or exercise oversight over, say, privacy issues, right?
Right.
Or classification,
Right.
and they don't train those beneath them or below them. They don't train them properly. They don't enforce the rules. They don't enforce the regulations. Instead, over time, there is a deterioration of discipline and of respect for those laws, for those regulations. And so people say, there's going to be someone that's going to say, can I get away with this?
Yeah.
Right? Or there's somebody like Snowden that I have mixed feelings about him, right?
Yeah.
Personally. But there's somebody who says, hey, what we're doing is not right. The NSA should not be spying on Americans the way we are.
Right.
Now, there are things that Snowden revealed. If I may throw in my 2 cents here,
Yeah. Go
very
ahead.
briefly about my personal views. There are things that he revealed that I'm glad we know
Yeah.
so that we could supposedly put a stop to it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he also revealed things that to some extent endangered people.
Right.
It happened during some of the stuff that Hillary Clinton had in the
In our
private
private
server
servers.
that also endangered people. Uh, some of them in China, in other countries, endanger them, right?
Yeah.
But uh, so I have mixed feelings about Snowden.
Yeah.
But to your point, to your question about how does somebody like him, his lack of stature, you use the word, we're gonna use the word stature. He was at a very low level. He's a young
Right.
guy.
Right.
How was he able to access so much information that was should have required a much higher level of access to be able to even see that, much less be able to copy it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I'll be honest with you. One of the things that we did in one of the companies that I worked for is we disabled the USB ports on the computers.
Exactly.
You could stick a USB stick in there, and there was nothing you could take out. I mean,
It's an easy fix.
yeah, it is an easy fix. Now, what's your take on Congress? I mean, one of the things in some of these videos that these guys claim is that a lot of these black ops programs, even Congress is not aware of. I mean, do you think that's true? I mean, do you think that Congress doesn't have that kind of oversight, that a lot of things are kept from Congress that they don't know about? I mean, it almost seems like they don't know. I mean, keep in mind, they don't even know what's in a bill, normally a 300-page bill, let alone this,
Yeah, I buy that. I think they're willingly ignorant.
Yeah.
Like
Like
they don't want
when
to
you say
know.
willingly, you say se hacen los tontos.
Yeah, like
Out of sight, out of sight, out of mind.
yeah, yeah. It's like they have contact with people at the top of these other institutions, like the National Geospatial Intelligence Agencies. The what's the one that has a very uh, passive sounding name? Uh, that sounds like almost like the National Geographic
Yeah,
uh,
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
magazine. It sounds like that, but they're actually a spy agency. I mean, they're the ones actually they have general oversight over all U.S. satellites,
Yeah,
right?
isn't that
like
the National Oceanic and
yes, that's the one.
something? Yeah, yeah. That,
That's the one. That's the one.
yeah,
This sounds of oh, they deal with they're taking pictures of the ocean. Well,
yeah,
yeah, but they also control they're the final authority on every single satellite, whether
yeah,
it's surveillance, reconnaissance, communications satellite that the U.S. owns, and there's a lot of them.
yeah,
Um, so the Congress, by law, has oversight over all of these agencies.
yeah,
So there's a committee member like the chairman of every committee and subcommittee and the ranking member that have some kind of uh, uh, liaison with all of these agencies,
hmm,
and they protect each other from knowing what these agencies are doing because they don't want to have oversight.
yeah,
Just do your thing, and if it's controversial, I don't want to know about it. We
right,
don't want to know about it. Just do your thing. Just leave me out of it.
yeah,
Like I know that's the case.
yeah,
Um, Now if it can benefit me, then I want in on it.
right. Now I want to play another clip real quick, and luckily we haven't been booted off by Google, but I want to play a clip by somebody that surprised me was part of the. He was actually in the hearing, and I get a kick out of him because I think he's kind of loony at times. But I think you know who this guy is. Let me see if I can find him. Hold on. Let's see if I can find this guy. Where are you? Where are you? Let's see. Ah, here he is.
That
Yeah,
way then.
but I will say, I'll call it a lazy attitude about declassifying videos. I mean, I've seen some of the videos of
not
the
this
recent
guy.
shoot down.
Hold on. Let's see, I could find him. Oh, Matt
No,
Getz.
it gets.
Getz. I was really surprised, but I want you to hear what his complaint was. And I'm surprised with these Republicans. Typically I don't would think Republicans would be
Several months
even
ago, my
tackling
office received a protected
this
disclosure from Eglin
Here
Air
we go.
Force Base indicating that there was a UAP incident that required my attention. I sought a briefing regarding that episode and brought with me Congressman Burchett and Congresswoman Luna. We asked to see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down, he said that his FLIR system malfunctioned, and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it, and the only way we could see it is passively, which is how you got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
And how should we think about four craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond? In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people, and that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe that perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Grush in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary, so that we're able to track how to get this type of reporting and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly, as a guest here of the Fine Oversight Committee. I yield back.
Yeah, so this is Matt Gates.
Wow.
You know, they were denied access to those images and those radar images. But what was kind of astonishing, I guess, in this piece was that this aircraft, whatever it was, not only was flying around, but they were able to disable key systems. I mean, that's pretty impressive. It's almost like you're talking about EMP-like, capabilities. We've heard about EMP and how systems can get disabled. There's been all kinds of stories about EMP weapons as with regards to the power grid and military installations. I mean, what's your take on that capability? That's pretty scary that some kind of thing out there can just disable your stuff.
Well, think about in a combat environment. Consider the scenario where let's relive Pearl Harbor,
Yeah.
but writ large, where the homeland is under attack, and the president gives the order, and Pacific or planes in California, Virginia, East and West Coast, they launch into the Pacific and into the Atlantic, right? And we're gonna fight from the west and from the east. And you have hundreds and hundreds, thousands of planes. I don't know if it's thousands, but certainly hundreds of fighter jets
Right.
out there, and bombers
Right.
and refueling jets. And there's whether they're man-made, whether they're human or not, these planes have the capabilities to maybe not drop them, like with dead weight into the ocean, but these whatever these spacecraft are, they have the capability to disable maybe even weapon systems on our fighter jets.
Right.
So not only are these jets unable to fight, these pilots are at the mercy of these aircraft, and so is the homeland.
Right. Yeah. It is scary.
So, okay, so let me throw this here. Let me throw this other thing here. These UFOs.
Yeah.
Let me throw a wrinkle into this scenario. What if? So we are aware of UFOs, but what if there are hundreds of these things too, but we haven't seen them because there are these kinds of things, but there are also underwater.
Right.
Remember the movie? Oh, with Sam Harris. Um, it's an old movie. I had the name, and it's at the tip of my tongue. Anyways, but what if there's something underwater in the oceans that sees our submarines? We don't see it. We don't detect it. Obviously, the plane, these spacecraft, they show up, and our jets don't detect it until it's like running in front of them, and they disable our radars. What if there's things underwater that can do the same thing to our subs?
Right.
We are completely defenseless.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty. I mean, if it's that pervasive, we're in trouble, man. All of these hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars we spend on defense, like, what about it?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you touched a little bit about you were into satellites. Does it worry you the amount of satellites that are actually going out in orbit now? I mean, you've got Elon over there building constellations left and right. You've got other companies now that want to get into the big satellite business. Seems like everybody wants to put their own satellite. Are we ever going to run out of space to have these things lurk around, or are we just going to have to go higher and higher? I mean, I'm surprised that things don't crash against each other with all the amount of stuff lurking around up there.
I think eventually you're gonna have crashes
Yeah,
in space,
yeah,
uh, because people don't realize and I don't know off the top of my head anymore, but the velocities that they're traveling at are high velocity.
yeah. I think
So
there's
something the
17,000
size,
miles an hour or something like that. Something
yeah,
like that.
the velocities are crazy. So even the smallest object, if something hits the right spot on a satellite, it can kill it or kill certain components.
Right,
Um, for example, there are satellites. There's something called phased array antennas, uh, or take a multi beam antenna, right? So what that means is that it has in there they can be configured. So there's like these like let's call them circles. They're cones, right? On the satellites on these antennas, right?
right,
And it's like a honeycomb.
right,
And you can from Earth you can send commands to reconfigure these to focus the energy, the RF energy, at some point on the Earth,
right,
and uh, for a better signal. Well, if a couple of quarter-sized uh, fragments of metal or something in space hit some of those honeycombs, they ruin them, right? So
yeah,
you've lost two things, two components that that cannot provide service uh, to certain. They're not fixed to a certain geographic point on Earth,
Right.
but you've lost the ability to use those two beams. They're called beams. You cannot use those two beams to provide communications, or if they're imagery satellites, you cannot use them to do whatever it is that you're supposed to do, right?
Right.
And
Right.
those things are gonna happen
Right.
eventually.
Yeah.
As far as does it bother me? It doesn't bother me. That
Yeah.
the more the merrier. As far as satellites being sent up in space, uh, I know that I have a lot of friends that are still in that business.
Yeah.
I have one who's pretty high up in working with uh, Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
There's another one who works for Raytheon, but Lockheed Martin is the big baby in that scenario and in that field, and they're just building smaller and better satellites.
Right.
When I was working, this is not classified. When I was working, there's a constellation called Discus,
Yeah.
Defense Satellite Communications Subsystem. And at the time, there was a constellation of like 10 or 12 satellites. And you needed to have, I think it was like 7 or 8 active satellites to provide complete Earth coverage.
Wow.
When I was medically discharged from the Army in the beginning of 2008, they were just beginning to launch the new constellation that was going to replace that one.
Wow.
And it was called the WGS constellation. You only needed 3 of those to provide full coverage of the Earth, but I think it was like 10 times the bandwidth of the entire previous constellation.
Wow.
It was a leap in capability. It was insane.
Yeah.
What you could do with those, and so not just the bandwidth, but you could swap. You could do changes in frequency, like go from one band to the next. So like you could go from X band to KU band or K. That's getting a little nerdy or geeky.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all
But you
right.
could go to different bands
Yeah.
for the new satellite. So yeah, it was really cool stuff, man. I get kind of excited when I start talking about that. I still read. I have a book in my bookshelf. Actually, several books
Yeah.
because I keep buying stuff. When I get bored, I go to Amazon and
Yeah.
I buy too much stuff.
Yeah. No, not a problem there. It's the more reading, the better. So overall, Kevin, what do you think? Little Green Men, undecided, um, to be continued. I mean, it's interesting
I'm
stuff.
I'm not decided, but I need to do more reading on this guy, David Fravor, the
Rush?
last one,
Oh, the Fravor. Yeah.
naval commander.
Yeah.
He seems very very centered,
Yeah.
and his testimony is crazy.
Yeah.
And the fact that they don't want to give Gates access to some of this information, and some of the stuff that I've read, it's flipping me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like there's
Well, I definitely would love if I could be part of that skiff. It'd be interesting, but that's not gonna happen.
yeah. That SKIF stands for sensitive compartmented information facility.
Yeah.
So no radio signals can come in or out.
Yeah. 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 All righty. Well, we went over an hour and 30 minutes, which is longer than we anticipated, and we didn't get knocked out by Google, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so everybody, this was our episode. Obviously, there's still a lot of questions unknown with regards to these revelations that were brought up in a congressional hearing. I'm pretty sure we'll probably hear more of this stuff as the months go by. But Kevin's going to be joining me over the next few weeks. We've got other topics. We promise this is not going to be this topic. I know some people want to talk about more, meat and potatoes topics, and we do have a show next week, and we're going to look at the effectivity of Operation Lone Star. That is the state of Texas's program to curb illegal immigration. There's a lot of controversy with regards to some of the barriers that are being put up on the Rio Grande, so we'll be looking at that as well. And so stay tuned next week for that exciting episode. And we welcome Kevin on board, and we will see you all next week at 8 a.m. On Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Oh God, I'm running out of social media networks. Spotify, Twitter, TikTok, and Twitch for those millennial game.
Did you say 8 a.m.?
Sorry, 8 p.m. No.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do an 8 a.m. But so everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, we've got some interesting topics coming up, and it's getting more exciting every day. We've got the first Republican presidential debate scheduled later on this month on the 23rd. So we're going to have a preview as well of that. And we'll look at the candidates, and we hope that you guys tune in. Kevin, have a great evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem.
Good night.
It was great.
Good night.
Hopefully we didn't bore everybody.
I know.
All righty, everybody, have a good night.
Take care.